Dale Williams on K-Talk. AM 630 KTKK.
K-Talk.
Well, we should point out this is our final segment this hour with Bob Wilcox. Next hour we'll have him again, God willing, and the river don't rise. But Bob, George S. Patton Jr., General United States Army, didn't feel sorry for himself. He had warnings, and we'll get to this next hour in detail, hopefully. But he had warnings from a CIC agent of some rank, Stephen J. Skubik, and other sources. He had many, many sources that people were going to try to kill him. He was sleeping with arms nearby in these final days, and he didn't feel sorry for himself at all about it. His view was they're going to have a heck of a time trying to catch me. We're talking, ladies and gentlemen, about a man that Bob Wilcox characterizes in his book as one of the most powerful people on the face of the earth. And boy, was that true. The massive institution of the Third Army was at his beck and call. And we've got to do some quotes about Patton, or from Patton directly next hour. But anyway, let's let Bob Wilcox get back into it. This guy was the rare truth teller that surfaced among the highest generals. Everybody else was a team player in this sort of sordid undertaking as it became. But George was telling the truth, Bob.
Yes, and all of this that we're talking now is good because it's the background to, I guess we'll get in the second hour,
yes,
about what really happened to him.
Exactly.
But leaving him at the border of Germany, he could have ended that war. The Germans will tell you that, but we stopped him again. And Montgomery did this ill-fated bridge too far thing, and it failed. Now, at that point is the real beginning of what I think was his assassination. Not the real beginning, but the actual operational beginning, because there was a mission called Stop Patton at that time, and Bazada talks about this. It was first to just stop Patton. And what they did was they stole his gas so that Montgomery could do this ill-fated bridge too far thing. I talked to the driver of Patton at that time. He said it's the only time, well, it's the first time he saw Patton cry. Patton was livid. He was burning at the mouth. He could see that if he could go in there, he could end the war. All of the Germans were in disarray. They never could have fought again. But they did. They stole his gas. He couldn't advance, and that was by design. And they did that ill-fated thing. And what happened was he had to sit down and wait. And he did a little bit. He tried to go forward on whatever he could scrounge. It didn't work. And in the meantime, the Germans regrouped, and then they hit us at the Battle of the Bulge, as you have described. We lost more people at the Battle of the Bulge than we did at D-Day, and yet look at all that everybody talks about D-Day. Battle of the Bulge was the worst. And again, Eisenhower, he was so clueless that he had set up rest and recuperation operations in the Ardennes forest where these guys attacked him. And so Eisenhower then is scared to death. They may push us right off of the continent, and D-Day is for naught. And what does he do? He has a meeting, and the only guy, and he says, what can we do? What can we do? And all of his commanders don't know, and Patton stands up and says, no problem, I'm ready, I'll beat him out. And he did. He turned a huge army up north. This is a colossal, people don't understand, battles aren't just what you see in the movies. You got to feed these guys. You got to give them you got to give them their munitions. You got to give them, he turned that whole thing up there, and helped and saved those courageous paratroopers who were holding out at Bastogne.
Well, while he was being impeded by these bureaucrats that really shaped our world, that's why our world is in such bad shape, because there was only one or maybe one George Patton, and there were scores of these other. Well, I don't want to use the expletives, but the guy George Patton was not only capable of sealing the fate of the German army months and months ahead of the actual end of the war, but he was planning for countervailing moves to compensate for the incompetency of his superiors. And so that when it was time to move Third Army in just a few days up and hit the Germans at the Bulge, he had the plan in hand already.
He did, and he stopped what they were doing. Well, Can you imagine what the American people would have thought or would have said, would have done if they'd have known, hey, we could have ended the war at that time and saved all, a lot of guys died from September on into 45. I mean, a lot of guys died. Not only our guys, but the enemy. He could have saved a lot of killing. This is one of the fallacies about George Patton, that he was a ruthless blood and guts killer type thing. He did that for a reason. He was hit them fast and hit them as hard as you can because it saved lives. You'd kill the enemy fast and they couldn't hit you back. Well, that's another reason why anyone would have wanted to kill him. And as he went on, they finally let him go into Germany, and they then stopped him again. His original orders, his original feeling was he was going right for Berlin later on. But
a good place to stop, Bob Wilcox, because we're at our top of the hour break. That affords you, I don't know, maybe a 7 or 8 minute break, as well as myself and the folks listening. I'm riveted. I know if you're able to, and you don't have to go back to work, and you're not at lunchtime, you'll be back with Bob Wilcox and I in just about 7 minutes. Stay there.
Dale Williams on K-Talk. AM 630 KTKK. And now, Dale Williams on K-Talk.
Doing an interview where I felt that time was so against me, against myself and our guest, a man of some renown himself, author Robert K. Wilcox. Today we're talking to him about this remarkable and disturbing book that's, as I said, still cresting in terms of popularity, notoriety, and impact. It is a lens on the modern world and how the cabal that runs this world, if you will, deals with its problem children. And, of course, the problem child that's the object of the book, the subject of the book is George S. Patton, Jr., General of the United States Army, who died really fighting on your behalf, ladies and gentlemen, for a sovereign America and for a rational foreign policy in the enlightened self-interest of the United States of America. And we have not really known for sure that the man died essentially a martyr until, in my view, the emergence of this great book, Target Patton. Now, I'm going to take just a little bit of Bob Wilcox's time here. I'm going to read a quote from the book. This is page 111. Starting out right at the top, on May 7th, 1945, still fuming over what he considered the sellouts to the Russians of Berlin and Prague, Patton was hosting Robert Patterson, Undersecretary of War, soon to be elevated to Secretary of War. And in this conversation, one of Patton's relatives was also there. I believe it was a nephew or perhaps by marriage. But anyway, he was speaking his mind, and one of his aides recorded his words as thus: Patton, this is from George Patton, let's keep our boots polished, bayonets sharpened, and present a picture of force and strength to these people, meaning the Russians. Then Patterson said, "Oh, George, you have been so close to this thing so long, you've lost sight of the big picture." Then George Patton said, "Mr. Secretary, it is your privilege to say, 'Oh, George,' if you wish. But for God's sakes, listen to what I am trying to tell you. What would you have us do, George?" Secretary Patterson said, "I would have you keep the American armies intact. Tell the Russians where their border is, and give them a limited time to get back across. Warn them that if they fail to do so, we will push them back across it." Then Patterson said, "You don't realize the strength of these people." "Yes," Patton says, "yes, I've seen them. Their supply is inadequate to maintain them in a serious action such as I could put to them. They have chickens in their coops and cattle on the hoof. That's their supply system. They could probably maintain themselves in the type of fighting I could give them for 5 days. After that, it would make no difference how many million men they have, and if you wanted Moscow, I could give it to you. Let's not give them time to build up their supplies. If we do, then we have had a victory over the Germans. We have failed in the liberation of Europe. We have lost the war. We must either finish the job now, while we are here and ready, or later under less favorable circumstances." Bob Wilcox, one thing, now we want to get on to the actual event of the death of George Patton. But one of the things we failed to mention